his time of need. Rasa, his face pale but determined, stepped forward. He stood beside Dasa, his hand resting on his son's shoulder in a gesture of solidarity. "My son speaks true," he said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his chest. "We will not abandon those who have stood by us. We will not be ruled by fear." The crowd stirred. Some, their faces etched with fear, shrank back from Dasa and Rasa, their eyes filled with suspicion and distrust. Others, their gazes unwavering, stepped forward, their voices joining the growing chorus of dissent. The leader, his authority challenged, his face thunderous, raised his hand for silence. But before he could speak, Maya stepped forward, her babies cradled in her arms, their tiny faces peering out from the folds of her tunic. "You would have us abandon a hero," she cried, her voice filled with a mother's fury. "You would cast out those who risked their lives to protect us. Shame on you." Her words, sharp and accusing, cut through the tension like a knife. The villagers, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and admiration, watched in stunned silence. They had never seen Maya like this. They had never seen her so fierce, so protective, so utterly fearless. She was a force to be reckoned with. A hush fell over the crowd. Maya's words, like sparks on dry tinder, ignited a flame of defiance in the hearts of the villagers. They had spent the night cowering in fear, their spirits broken by the T-Rex's brutal attack. But Maya's courage, her unwavering defense of Dole, reminded them of who they were. They were Boomatheyam. They were survivors. They would not be ruled by fear. Dasa, his heart swelling with gratitude, met Maya's gaze. Her eyes, no longer filled with fear, but with a fierce determination that mirrored his own, gave him strength. He was not alone in this. He had Maya, he had Dole, and now he had the support of his family, his friends, his community. He would not let them down. The leader, his authority shaken, but his resolve unbroken, glared at the defiant group. He opened his mouth to speak, to assert his dominance, to remind them of the consequences of their actions. But before he could utter a word, a low rumble shook the very foundations of their world. The T-Rex was back. The villagers gasped, their newfound courage threatening to crumble under the weight of their fear. The rumble grew louder, closer, until it filled the air around them, vibrating and in their chests, rattling their bones. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The air grew heavy with the stench of blood and damp earth, the smell of death itself. Dasa, his heart pounding in his chest, grabbed Maya's hand. "We have to go," he said, his voice urgent. Now, he scooped up one of the babies, his small weight a reassuring presence in his arms. Maya, her eyes wide with fear, but her steps firm, followed close behind, their other child cradled securely in her arms. Rasa, his face grim, but his gaze steady, ushered the remaining villagers towards the safety of the dense jungle that surrounded their ravaged home. They moved quickly, their movements a blur of desperation and fear as the T-Rex's roars echoed through the trees, herding them like prey into the unknown. Dole, his massive form swaying with each labored step, led the way. He was their protector, their guide through this treacherous landscape. His wounds, still seeping blood, slowed him down, but his resolve never wavered. He would lead them to safety. He had to. The jungle, once familiar and comforting, now seemed to press in on them. The air, thick with the humidity and the threat of unseen dangers. Vines thick as a man's arm snagged at their feet, threatening to trip them, to send them sprawling to the jungle floor where the T-Rex's jaws awaited. The air buzzed with insects, their relentless drone a maddening counterpoint to the pounding of their hearts. But still, they pressed on, driven by fear and the desperate hope of survival. Deeper and deeper they fled, the remnants of Boomatheyam shrinking behind them until only the echo of the T-Rex's enraged roars marked its passing. Ahead, through a curtain of emerald vines and mist tinged with the red glow of the setting sun, a sight emerged, as startling as it was unexpected. Stone, ancient and weathered by the passage of eons, pierced the jungle canopy. Immense blocks carved with strange symbols that spoke of a time before time formed a gateway into a world lost and forgotten. These were the ruins, whispered about in hushed tones around the fires of Boomatheyam, a place of power, some said, a place of danger, others warned. Now, with the T-Rex's breath hot on their heels, it was their only refuge. Dole, his breath shallow, his strength waning, stumbled to a halt before the imposing archway. His blood painted a crimson trail upon the earth, a testament to his courage, his sacrifice. His massive head dipped, horns grazing the moss-covered stones, as if seeking an answer from the silent sentinels. Dasa, his heart heavy with a mixture of fear and gratitude, placed a hand on Dole's flank. The warmth of his friend's blood, sticky beneath his calloused palm, sent a jolt of urgency through him. They had found sanctuary for now, but the T-Rex would not be deterred, not for long. "We'll rest here," Dasa said, his voice hoarse but firm. He looked at Maya, her face pale with exhaustion, but her eyes still shining with that unyielding strength that had always been his beacon. She nodded, her grip tightening on their child, a silent vow passing between them. They would survive this, for their children, for each other, for the memory of the home they had fled. As darkness fell, swallowing the jungle in an inky embrace, they huddled together within the crumbling walls of the ruins. The air, thick with the scent of decay, and the faintest hint of something ancient and unknowable pressed in on them. But even amidst the fear, the uncertainty, a spark of hope flickered. They had faced the monster and they were still alive. They had found sanctuary in the most unexpected of places. And Dasa, his hand resting on the hilt of his spear, vowed that this was not the end. This was just the beginning. He would return to Boomatheyam. He would rebuild what had been lost, and he would face the T-Rex again for his family, for his village, for the future that was still within their grasp.